Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm not even gonna have to bring my co-host in. He's already up and on board with us. We chomping at the bit and raring to go. If you guys would, just a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into everything. If you ladies and gentlemen would do us a huge favor, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the show. It helps us out tremendously. It doesn't cost you one dime, but it definitely helps us try to get our show out to a broader audience. And we want to try to bring you guys as much information and perspective as we possibly can from real world drivers. And Chuc is retired now, but we gain from his years and years of experience as not only a motor carrier, but also as a broker as well. So we gain a tremendous amount of insight from those perspectives that he brings to the show. And with that being said, if you guys would, like I say, if you got any questions, comments, or concerns, please drop them down in the comments. Share the show, and I guess we're going to jump into this week's proceedings. And as we talked about right before we came on, there's a lot that's been going on. We're still seeing a lot of fallout from the tragic accident that took place down in Florida with the accident where the guy, unfortunately, 3 people lost their lives doing the illegal U-turn on the Florida Turnpike. And there has been a tremendous amount of fallout, pushback, coming from just about every angle. You got so Secretary Sean Duffy announced about states that are not complying with the English proficiency standards, that they are going to be at risk of losing federal funding. With that, definitely is going to have some teeth to it. I think that there's also calls for some people say that doesn't go far enough. Now, this is where I want to get your insight, Chuc, because I've heard people talking about that he's going to be trying to hold motor carriers and the states accountable. But a lot of people are saying that I'm hearing on social media, as far as the truck driving community, they're talking that not only do the states and truck driver or carriers need to be held accountable, but they're saying everybody should have some kind of skin in the game. And they're asking for Secretary Duffy to also hold brokers and shippers accountable for what's going on. And I think that through another process, I think that brokers are already kind of, I think, acutely aware as to, because we're still living in the age of litigation with the vicarious liability situations. And I think that this definitely plays right into that hand. Just want to initially, what is your take on that situation as far as people are talking about, they want brokers and shippers to also be held to a certain standard?
I think that, Rico, I think that, to me personally, I think that sounds like a witch hunt. I have, and I guess I've been a shipper now too, because I import some of my old trucks, so that makes me a shipper, and I've shipped them down to the U.S. You have no control. You make a phone call, you call a company, whether it's Traffics or C.H. Robinson, doesn't matter, and you say, "Listen, I need a truck. I need a truck to take a load from point A to point B," and it goes down the line. The truck that's near us that can do the job the best gets the work. I don't think it's the job of the broker or the shipper to take liability for the lack of English proficiency of a truck driver. Like, come on. I think that's got to be given total responsibility of the motor carrier. And whether you're a single motor carrier or you are a mega carrier of 5,000 trucks, I think you've got to make sure that every driver driving under your authority understands basic English. You have to pass the test.
And I think that that's part of the problem. I think I think that a lot of people are emotional about the situation that we find the industry in right now, especially from the driver's perspective, because there's always been kind of an adversarial atmosphere when it comes to drivers, carriers, and brokers. There's always been some type of adversarial relationship, and I think that there is definitely there's room for it not to be as adversarial. I don't think we're going to ever create an environment to where I think that's just the way of the world. I don't think you're going to ever create perfect harmony. But I think that from a standpoint of rational thinking people, people have to accept the responsibility for what it is that they are responsible for. And I agree with you on the point of it's not, at the end of the day, if you running a motor carrier, that's part of your function as the motor carrier. You have to be making sure that you are hiring people that are professional, courteous, that understand the laws of what it is that you're hiring to perform the job that you're hiring them to do. You can't necessarily pass on that responsibility to someone else that like you say, they may not have any idea. They may, only thing that the broker is going to maybe possibly know, especially if you have multiple drivers, they're going to ask you for the driver's name and possibly his contact information. But they're not going to be they're not the one that license that driver, and two, put them behind the wheel of the equipment that he's driving.
That is the responsibility of the motor carrier. They've got to live up to the responsibility that they've been granted. And I think, Rico, some of this, we've fallen on hard times in our industry. There's no two doubts about it. Let's not kid ourselves. And there's some of the animosity towards foreign drivers is certainly, here are these people coming from other countries stealing my work.
Exactly.
And I think some of that is going to, it's going to, and I'm not saying that it's right that we have drivers that are running up and down the road that don't understand English. This is not right because it's dangerous. Rico, can you see you and I over in India or even in Europe trying to drive a truck when we don't understand the language?
Yes, and I think that this is a bigger problem to where this goes into, if you really start peeling back the layers of the onion on this thing, it really goes into I don't know if there's a certain amount of greed that's behind this as well. What do I mean by that is a lot of guys that come over here, they don't really understand the English language that well, and they're used to their living conditions being a certain way, and they may not be more as sophisticated when it comes to being able to negotiate rates. And I think that's what that's the sentiment from a lot of drivers and some carriers out here, is that they are the reason that the rates are the way that they are. I say some of that may be at play, but for the most part, the rates are the way that they are, unfortunately. And I'm a carrier, guys, but unfortunately, we just this freight market it's in the doldrums right now. Our freight levels, as far as when it comes to capacity, as far as tonnage, we're not moving as much freight as we moved back in 2019 this year. We're way below. We're way below the amount of volume that we normally move within a given year. And that is the reason, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, this is a supply and demand industry, especially if you're working spot market and you don't have contracts. We are at the mercy of what the market is demanding. And right now, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the rate still shouldn't be a little bit better than what some of them are being shown, but at the end of the day, we still have to negotiate very hard, because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in you earn what you negotiate what you earn, and you earn what you negotiate.
Exactly. And what's happened is, and I've been saying this all along since we've been doing this podcast, we live in a live market. I didn't hear anybody complaining when everybody was getting $3, $5, $7, $10 a mile during those glory days that lasted about 20 months or so. Everybody stuffed their pockets pretty good. And now reality has come in. Freight levels the world, one thing I want to explain to our listeners, the world we live in changed an awful lot since in 5 years since
Yes.
COVID. The retail sector, let's talk about that for a second.
Yes.
Other than Walmart and your Dollar General and stores like that, the retail sector is hurting. It's bleeding. The department stores, we don't. We have one chain of department stores, and it's a very small chain left in all of Canada. The other ones have all died. Our oldest company in the country died, went bankrupt 3 months ago. That's Hudson Bay Company. If I'm not mistaken, it's the oldest company in North America. It's bankrupt. Um, that's just sign of the times. People's buying tastes have changed. People buy their pants and shoes and all sorts of other stuff. Their televisions on Amazon. So
Right.
people aren't going to retail stores. So if your company has been servicing the retail sector for decades, you don't have the business that you did 5 years ago.
Well, not only that, you can talk about retail, you can talk about automotive. A lot of this stuff is hand in hand, and we never try to make our show. We never try to delve too far off into the weeds as far as the political arena goes. Whether or not you are a Republican, Democrat, Donald Trump supporter, or what have you. These tariffs are definitely having some type of an effect. Now, whether that's going to be in the long run, whether that's going to be good or bad, that yet remains to be seen. But right now, the tariffs are definitely having an effect, and that's one portion of the equation, because you got markets and companies and CEOs who don't really know or understand how they should be moving in this market, which is the reason why the freight markets are so soft. They don't know whether or not to stockpile, or if they do stockpile, what is that going to end up costing them? There's a whole lot of moving parts and logistics when it comes to how people are navigating, because we are in a world economy, and you have to get even things that are made in America still rely on outside sources as far as things that are coming in to be manufactured and be put together from the entire world economy. It's just everything is just not made right here in the United States, and you have to deal with the fallout and the repercussions that all of these different things have caused. So you got the tariffs is going to be passed on to the consumer ultimately, and we are the first, as you like to say, Chuck. We are the bird, the canary in the coal mine. We are the first ones to be.
We are, and we're taking it. You know what? We're all taking it on the chin right now, and we don't know nobody knows the effects of these tariffs. I can tell you that leading up to, I think it was 1932, was the last time the U.S. Had these tariffs. They put tariffs on things like this, and the result was Japan bombed Pearl Harbor because they couldn't sell any of their product in United States. Now, is this going to happen again? I don't know. I ran a logistics company. I'm not a world leader. I'm definitely not a history. I love history, but I'm certainly not an expert at where this is going to take us. But it's a mess right now because we've dismantled the engine. We're trying to rebuild it. But while it's not running, there's no freight being moved.
Right. And so from a standpoint of, I always try to, we always try to have solutions here. We not just try to sit here and just bellyache and moan and complain. We always try to have solutions here on the show. And so this is one of those times when being smaller, if you are a smaller carrier, that you can kind of benefit from your being small, because you're able to be nimble. You're able to pivot kind of quickly.
That's right.
And so you have to kind of be able to try to take advantage of that and see where those pivots can potentially put you in a position to profit. Whether that mean if you're changing your focus up, as far as you may not do as much long haul, you may want to start to begin, because that's the other thing from a lot of research that I've been looking at and been kind of compiling. It shows that trucking is no longer really a long haul business model. Um, and definitely for a small guy, it definitely hurts you to to try to play in that arena. But it is unless you are leased on to a carrier that has the capacity and the freight to fill those long haul lanes, a lot of times you're going to be a lot better off trying to focus on your particular market where you are within a 500 to 800-mile radius. You may not even have to go out as far as 800, but I definitely think if you stick within that 500-mile radius of wherever you're domiciled out of, I think that you could probably potentially put yourself in a much better position to benefit from the relationships that you can build within that network.
And Rico, I agree, but I disagree. I would say that right now in this market, the furthest you should be looking at is 400 to 500 miles out. That is the very furthest. And if our listeners, especially those ones running dry vans and reefers, if they can stick, the closer to home they can stick, the more money they're going to make, because they're going to get paid more per mile by doing less miles.
And one thing, and then the caveat to that, Chuck, is this: if you want to, I think that because I'm kind of experimenting, I'm going to be, I'll be the kind of the test, the
guinea pig.
Yeah, I'll be. So what I have tried to do is, if I know that there's a weekend that I'm going to work, or I want to work on a weekend, sometimes on the weekends it's kind of difficult to do stuff locally or right around in your area.
Right.
On the weekend, then if you can find something out of your area that may put you delivering on Monday, that's something that's maybe 800 miles or further away. But then the only way I would do that is if I'm reloading, getting right back into my market so that I can try to make sure that I can service my people that I've tried to build those relationships with.
Very important.
I get phone calls now, especially since I really have been concentrating on trying to build locally. I'm getting more phone calls from brokers that don't even post loads, and they are calling to see, okay, I got this coming up next week in the local area, and I want to have X amount of moves. Is this something that you can help me out with, or whatever? And in building those relationships and getting a chance to get stuff way ahead of time gives me a blueprint to where I can start to try to plan out for the week. And it definitely helps, especially if you got a good relationship when it comes to rate while negotiating the rates. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all going to boil down to. If you can get a really fair rate and not put as much wear and tear on your equipment, that's going to be a win-win.
Yeah, and you know what? Fuel's down, but it's still expensive. It's expensive to run a truck, and you've got all the other costs, tolls, you've got tire costs, wear and tear. It's expensive to run a truck, so you want to get as much per mile as you possibly can.
Right. And so, Chuck, I know, like I said, this market has kind of been an anomaly, so to speak. I started my authority back in 2010. This has really been the toughest market that I have actually seen, that I've participated in since I've had my authority.
It's the worst market I've seen, and I've been in it 51 years.
that was going to be my question. What is your take on how things are? And I think that a lot of people, we have to try to do what we can for the remainder of the year, because this year is basically a wrap. I mean, we're getting ready to go into the ninth month of the year. But I am cautiously optimistic that by the second quarter of next year, I'm hoping that we're really going to see, hopefully we're going to see a little bit of the sun coming back up, so to speak.
Rico, I hope you're right. I will be pleasantly surprised. I'm not expecting anything. I think we're in this. I honestly think it's got to get a lot worse. We've got to shed a hell of a lot more equipment before we get to where we have more trucks. Get this, we have more trucks now than we did in 2019, and we don't have as much freight as we did in 2019.
Yeah, we definitely, I think that. So circling back around to the topic we started the show out with, do you think that with the enforcement and the hammer, so to speak, starting to drop on the English proficiency and all of the different things, do you think that that is going to have an effect as far as helping? I don't want to say helping, but do you think that that's going to help maybe force more people out of the business?
Yes, you know what it'll do? It'll certainly force out some of the low-level operators who don't play by the rules, who bring in foreign labor, and some of it is their relatives or people from their village back home, and who work cheap. And they work cheap because they can't get a job anywhere else except from their cousin Sam or their cousin Joe, who will hire them. And that'll start to help. But you know what? It's a kind of an aspirin on the on fourth level cancer. I don't know if it's going to cure it. It will help. We got to get a hell of off the road.
Another thing is, I think that we have to. I don't know. I initially got my CDL way back in the day. I had a CDL. I first got my CDL from. I don't know if I ever told the story. Driving school buses.
No,
I went to school. I went to school in high school. I got my CDL in high school. I started driving my senior year in high school. The school bus was hiring, and albeit I was looking at it from an opportunity of, hey, I can drive school buses, and I might be able to see some other girls from other schools, so I can.
Why not?
That was sort of my motivation behind it, and so I went to the school district where I went to. They were hiring, like I said, they were hiring for school bus drivers, and they took us through, and we were able to get our CDL. This is like right at the beginning of the CDL period when you had to in the early 90s when you had to you had to get your CDL in order to drive school buses. So I have a passenger endorsement, but I only had a class B license. I didn't have a class A. And from that standpoint, I matriculated on. I started working. I was working factory jobs at the time, and this is started getting. I got laid off from a company that make televisions, make the old picture tube televisions, Hitachi Electronic.
Oh yeah, wow.
So I got laid off from there, got another job with a great company, and got laid off from there. 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company. I used to work for them in a manufacturing facility. I was like, man, I keep getting laid off from these manufacturing jobs. Boy, these trucks, and I got this CDL. I see trucks all over the place, man. There's got to be. Let me see if I can put this thing to use. Young, had just started a family, all that type of stuff, and I went to a truck driving school, and I tell you, somebody prayed for me because I went to a truck driving school. They put us all on a bus. They shipped us up to Lexington, Kentucky. Oh man, you talk about it. That was excuse the term, that was a shit show. I mean that the train, everything. I think I was there maybe 2 days. I was like, yeah, something's not quite right with these people. And I ended up catching a bus back home, and got hooked up with they're out of business now. They got bought out by Swift. I ended up getting hooked up with MS Carriers out of Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh yeah, good carrier. Yes.
And they had a school. Like I said, I already had my CDL, but I had to get upgraded to a Class A. And they had a school, so they had third party certified testers at MS Carriers in the school that they had. I mean, they had a whole thing, but their school at MS Carriers, the training that we received there, even though I already had a CDL, was I would say that was some top tier training, because we had we had to go for a whole month. It was not a 2 week situation.
Right.
It was a 4 week class. The first 2 weeks were all books. We learned sat in the classroom. We learned learned about permits. We learned how to read maps, routing, all that stuff was all taught. And then after we got through with kind of the book knowledge aspect of everything, we went out onto the driving courses, and then we had 2 weeks of driving before we tested out and got our CDL, tested out and got our official CDL. So that I'm saying all that to say, I think that one thing that we need to bring back, because it seems like it's very easy now to get into the industry. We had some hurdles that we had to go through in order to get through. And even with MS carriers, even though they may have gotten you licensed, when they put you out with a trainer, because you learned more that first week with the trainer than you did the whole 4 weeks that you were in school. Sure. Once you get out here in the real world, the real world is a whole going to throw things at you that a book can never throw at you. And that experience with MS carriers and the training that I received with them, I tell you, that was probably I don't think that there's anybody quite doing it quite that way now. I think I'm seeing a lot of people, I'm hearing a lot of stories, it may be 2 weeks. And I mean, they are forcing stuff at you so fast, and they're training you for a test, not really testing your training. They're training you for a test and getting you able to pass a test. And I think that that's putting a lot of people at jeopardy, not only the motoring public, but I'm thinking that it's ill-equipping you, the person that is actually receiving it, that's getting the license, is ill-equipping you to be able to deal with what is the reality of what's going on out here on the road. And so that's kind of like how that was kind of a Cliff's Notes version of how I got into the industry. Like I say, it started out from high school driving school buses, but at the end of the day, the training that I received with MS carriers, and they were serious about safety at MS carriers. They really didn't play around with a lot of any kind of rough stuff. They ran a pretty good ship. I hate that they went out of business or got
they sold to Swift, but they had a totally different business model than Swift.
Right.
They're a training company, and they do very well by training drivers, but it's questionable, and I'm not here to question, but there have been a lot of eyebrows raised whether their training is good enough, as for some of the other carriers as well, because I don't think that even a month is long enough today to be able to teach somebody how to do this job. It's gotten more complex. Traffic is so much worse now, and car drivers are worse.
Yeah, and like I said, we had to in school for a month, and I think we had to be out with a trainer. So it was a total of 8 weeks, I believe it was. So it was almost 2 months, because you had to spend a certain amount of time on the truck with the trainer, and you did the majority of driving while you were with that trainer. You did the majority of the driving. It wasn't like a true team operation. The trainer maybe drove 4 hours a day, but you were that trainer's responsibility, and that trainer had to have at least 2 years of experience in order to be a trainer at MS Carrier. Yeah. So it wasn't like I've heard some situations where you got guys that have been training and they only have 1 month of being on their own, and the company is making them a trainer, and they're taking somebody out, and you got the blind leading the blind. That's why
that's why we're having some of these issues. I have a collection of old trucks, and some of them are so old they don't have seat belts. Most of them have metal dashboards. There's no collision avoidance. None of them have disc brakes. None of them have padded dashboards. None of them have airbags. But when the people drove these trucks years ago, they have a hell of a lot less crashes per mile or per 100,000 miles as today. It's become a lot more dangerous. It's become more dangerous because of, number one, lack of training, and it's more, there's more traffic out there, less roads for them, and people drive more aggressively.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so um, trying to connect all the dots. We gotta make sure that um, coming back to one of the biggest things that we were talking about previously as well, um, trying to make the industry a better place by doing the things that we need to do in order to clean up ourselves. I think we got to kind of help police ourselves, but I think that by we're talking about getting the non-domicile drivers out of this system, and maybe hopefully that may make rates and stuff go back up. But we also need to get to a point to where we as the driving community maybe put some pressure on making the barrier of entry a little bit more difficult to help. I don't want to say protect um, from other people being able to come in, but I think that we have to have there needs to be a certain professionalism and a certain bar in order to get in here, because right now it's almost to a point, if you can follow the mirror, you can get your license.
Rico, I don't want to say let's get rid of foreign-born drivers. If a driver comes here from somewhere else and he or she can do a great job, they are an asset to our industry. They will do a good job. I've had people come from England. I've had people come from Australia through the years. I've had people come from India. I've had people come from all over the Persian Gulf. You name it, I've had people come from there, and they could speak English. We had one guy once, about 25 years ago. I called him Little Joe. He drove a straight truck, a Polish fellow, good driver. But he got caught for the English deficiency back then, 25 years ago. He got a ticket. English was horrible. And I said to him when he got the ticket in, I said, Joe, you know what? There's language tapes you can learn while you're driving. You're going to do this.
Yeah, and I don't think that I'm all for, like you said. I just think that people have to be trained properly. I'm all for. I don't care. I don't care where you're born or whatever. But you need to be able to meet the bare minimum requirements as far as being able to understand. We are in America. We have to understand the English language, because that's how we communicate. That's how our forms, that's our bill of lading. I mean, imagine if you can't read. This is a perfect, because I just went back and I got recertified for my hazmat.
Right. Good for you.
Imagine you go to a shipper and they don't really they give you bill of lading and you got some hazmat on there, and if you can't read your bill of lading to even know that you have hazmat, and you may have you may be coming in, it may be a drop and hook situation. So you may go in and picking up a trailer, and the bills are there. No one's there to say, hey, you got hazmat here, or whatever. But if you can't do the basic functions of the job, is being able to understand, you may not be able to get inside of the trailer and check it and look and see how it's loaded because it's sealed up. But you have the documentation, the paperwork is there to know what's supposed to be on that trailer. And if you can't read the English language, how can you effectively perform the functions of the job?
100%. And even I've had drivers been given the wrong load. Okay. I've had drivers take the wrong trailer. All that happens in real life because we're dealing with human beings. Okay. Right. They're not machines, they're human beings. You go into a dark, you go into a dark yard at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're supposed to do a hook, and you're supposed to pick up trailer number 53271. Well, you know what? It happens. There are people out there today that still letter their trailers with number 53 so and so. Dumbest thing I've ever heard. But still, because accidents happen. That's where somebody makes a mistake. Somebody grabs the wrong trailer. Somebody is given the wrong shipment, and it says right on the shipping document, hazardous, or it doesn't say on the shipping document, but on the trailer, it says flammable or hazardous or gas or whatever. How would you know if you didn't read? You would never know.
Exactly. Exactly.
You
That's
know,
the that's the thing. And so with that being said, like I said, I'm not against anyone foreign or anything like that being able to get a job doing driving trucks or anything like that. But you have to be able to meet the minimum requirements and the criteria. And I think that we have to um, from a standpoint, we have to be protectionist about public safety. One, because at the end of the day, nobody gets out here. I couldn't imagine, God forbid, I've had one accident in my truck, and it was not a very serious accident. But I don't know how I would be able to deal with the thought of being responsible for taking someone's life, let alone multiple people's life. That would really I might be done for as far as being able to get behind the wheel and driving.
well, you know what? Drivers have known. It's been known that drivers have changed who they were. They've changed personalities. They've gone into deep depression. Some of them have even taken their own lives. Some of them have started to take alcohol or drugs to deal with the pain of taking somebody's life uh, in that situation. So yeah, you're putting a lot at risk when you're out there on the road.
Yeah,
And our job really, it's risk management. That's part of our job as professional truckers.
yeah, that's gonna be really really tough. I was hoping, and we got to get Dean back on as well sooner than later, because I really wanted to kind of dive into. I wanted to try to get a chance to dive into the numbers as far as where we looking at as far as the freight market is concerned. I've been seeing different stuff, um, looking at different other podcasts such as Freight Waves and things of that nature. And like I
Right.
said, everyone's talking about how we're still in an incredibly soft market. And and I think, like I said, I'm from the aspect of, I think that we got to get some time. People got to get some time to get kind of acclimated to what these tariffs are doing to the market, getting acclimated to how they want to moving forward, dealing with it, how they're going to stock supply chains, things of that nature. And so I think that by the time, and that's why I'm kind of leaning towards maybe the second quarter of next year, we may have a little bit more of a understanding as to how everything is being affected. And I think that maybe, hopefully, if consumer demands kind of pick back up a little bit, because we're still dealing with soft consumerism as well, and we still have very,
Well, yeah, people don't. Yeah, people don't have that extra
they don't have the
spending money.
disposable income. Yes.
No, and you have some very wealthy people that still, they live lavishly. They fly around in private jets and all sorts of things. But then you have the rest of us who, they look to see if bananas are on sale this week so they can buy bananas. But it's come down to that. And the other thing is, North America, you guys as well as us guys up in Canada, we have all become addicted to buying cheap stuff.
Yep.
And in order to, and this is where President Trump may be mistaken. The fact that he feels that by bringing industry back to the United States instead of having it made, the things made in Asia or Europe or wherever, especially Asia, um, that we're going to have to bring these jobs back. The problem is people are running to buy Chinese cars now wherever they can. Because I saw one on Instagram today. You should see the car they're selling for $40,000. Now it's an electric car, which doesn't interest me at all. But my God, this thing looks like a Range Rover.
I tell you what, that's going to be, and that's, I think that the automotive industry is definitely having some, man, they definitely been getting their lunch ate, because a lot of them, with the government and everything, you had the previous administration that was pushing EVs, pushing lowering carbon footprints, things of that nature, and definitely that had an effect in the trucking industry as well, because then we had these new quote unquote these EPA standards, and that came, with all of the different things, the stuff that we experience, having to try to figure out DPF systems, so on and so forth. And a lot of people are still reeling from the effects of DPFs and SR, the whole emission systems that they put on trucks. We even lost an entire engine manufacturer because they were saying, Caterpillar was like, we just not even going to compete with this stuff. We're out of here.
No.
So you got a change in administration that has a different viewpoint on all of this stuff, and some of the stuff may be getting relaxed and stuff like that. And so, from a standpoint of a manufacturer, they don't really know being smart because, hey, okay, we got this administration for the time period that they're allotted, but what's going to happen with the next administration? Are they going to go right back to the things that they took away? Or are they going to go right back and implement again? So they don't know from a standpoint of when you're dealing with billion-dollar organizations such as OEMs and things of that nature. And I'm not just talking about trucks, but I'm talking about four-wheelers. They don't.
Right.
These companies are not going to be constantly retooling and getting their manufacturing lines together based upon a flash in the night legislation. And it seems as if not only, and you're thinking about from a global standpoint, I'm not a big EV guy. I'm not, as far as electric cars and stuff of that nature. I don't want to deal with I don't want to, drive an electric car. I'm not really a big adopter on the electric car situation. I want to be able to drive. I like to hear, there's nothing like a good V8 under you.
I'm with you.
But globally, you got, from a global standpoint, thinking outside of the United States, a lot of people are, EV is going to be the wave. And China and Japan and those guys are light years ahead of us when it comes to the EV technology. And they're building, we've seen this once before, back when America was still building cars that people didn't like, and Japan came in here with cars that people found enjoyable and affordable, and that's how you have the Toyotas and the Hondas of the world that are kind of got the automotive industry on hold, so to speak. So
you know what? And they build great cars, and they built the cars that were needed at the time. Gas got very expensive, and GM, Ford, and Chrysler were all building great, big, huge, boats. And then Honda and Toyota came in here with Datsun, and which is now Nissan, built these small cars, and you could park them anywhere, and they got great fuel mileage, and people fell in love with them, and they were reliable. And if you remember, the big three got pretty complacent and arrogant for a while.
Yep.
I think they've learned a lesson. But what scares me for everybody with electric vehicles is the fact that there's not a lot of components in electric vehicles. And those components need to be hauled on trucks.
Yeah, I'm not, like I said, that takes us into a bigger, if we follow this thing all the way out, it takes us into a much bigger problem that I think coming down there. And I think it's part of the problem that we are facing in our industry as well. When you start, as well as you start talking about the autonomous trucks and stuff like that, the less things that it takes for people to actually have jobs. How is all this stuff going to be bought? If nobody has a job, who's going to be buying this stuff?
Exactly. It's mind-boggling. And I really, I've been saying it on this show all along, I do not see a time when we're going to be sending when you're going to get out of your truck on Interstate 75 and send it up the road, and somebody's going to get into your truck 8 hours later and go deliver the load. I don't see it. It's not going to. They've proven that it works. There was a, if you read about it, there was a deal between, I think it was Hirschbach Transport and it was it was PACCAR, either Peterbilt or Kenworth, and they were actually running. Yeah, they were running trucks in Texas with no drivers till the OEM found out about it, and he said, "You stop this stuff right now, because that's on us. That's not part of our deal."
Right. And I think that that's going to, like I say, that's going to be the thing. I don't think that in our lifetime, I don't think that you're going to get, because you have driverless taxis and stuff. I seen one the other day that in Atlanta. I seen car going down on someone in the back seat. I'm like, what the hell is nobody driving that car? And it's wild when you see it in person, but you like, man. But I don't think that we're going to get to a point where the motoring public is going to allow for an 80,000-pound vehicle to be unmanned, just out here going up and down the highways, because something is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Something is going to happen. And not to say that the technology is flawed or anything like that, but the technology cannot anticipate what somebody else is going to do. And if you and if something, God forbid, if a sensor gets a little bit too much dirt or mud on it or whatever, how is that going to affect the whole apparatus? Whether anything could happen. Like I said, I don't think that the motoring public is going to sign off on an unmanned vehicle being able to go up and down the highway, sharing the highway with people like that.
No, I totally agree. And if you've been around trucks for a long time, and you know that it's not the stuff it's always the stuff that you don't think can happen is going to happen. An airline coming off. I've seen that happen to somebody.
Yeah.
Just wasn't on firmly, comes off. Boom. All of a sudden, your truck dynamites in the middle of the road. What happens? You don't have a driver.
Right.
It's just so much stuff can happen. This is craziness. Great technology, okay, which means that maybe people don't have to be trained to the degree that we're asking them to. That's the good part.
I think it'll be fine. I think you even mentioned this, and I've seen they got some applications where if you got a yard jockey moving trade, in a closed environment where it's geo fenced off and it's not out. I think that you can pull that off fine, no problem, and probably be a great asset, because you're not having to worry about the risk of anybody else that's outside of the company maybe being affected or hurt from anything that's happening on company property. But once you get away from that and you're out here on public transportation roads and things of that nature, I just don't think that the at least my generation, I don't think that they got the stomach for that to allow that.
No, I don't think any generation does. That in Western Canada now they have autonomous farm equipment. So you've got a combine that's running, no driver in it. But we're talking a 10,000 acre range. Okay, so you know what? Not a lot can happen. You're not on an interstate highway piloting 80,000 pounds.
Right. So I'm hoping that I don't know. I just don't. But it's going to be. We're definitely living in a brave new world. But we were saying that to say, with all of the different things that are going on with as far as the how this is affecting industry, you were saying that less components on electric cars, so less stuff being shipped, less vendors and suppliers to help build and manufacture that car. And as a matter of fact, I was watching a podcast the other day just to talk about, because I'm a little bit into cars. I'm a little bit of a car guy, and the electric company Rivian, they were talking about they have a headlight for their vehicle, but they have like over 72 different vendors that make up the components to make that one headlight. And they were talking about how to expand, and they were talking about how the electric cars, how much value and everything that they lose and everything. It's a bigger discussion, but it's a lot of things goes into to creating that car. And with the electric cars, there are a lot less moving parts, so to speak. But with the traditional automotive cars, there are a lot of industries that's helped support the making of those vehicles, which translates into more jobs for trucking. But since all of the EV revolution, just take note of how many trucking companies have actually unfortunately went out of business because of the less of need for those different manufacturers and vendors to support that industry. You know, it's kind of being waned down and cut down even as we speak.
Yeah, and that's what's going to, as we lose more manufacturers, we need less trucks. So that's where I'm not seeing the future being very rosy in the next year. It'll take some sort of a miracle to really get this economy going.
And also, kind
And I
of
don't want
circling back around, we were talking about, I was saying that long trucking isn't really a long haul situation, but and the other thing behind that is with the merger of these talking about with these railroad companies, a lot of the really long distance stuff is going on the train. They can provide a much and with the different things, with COVID and everything else in the tariffs, it changed the perspective of a lot of people. So a lot of people are moving back to the old hub and spoke, which where we could benefit from, because we could be servicing those companies in our own area versus trying to chase it down and drive it across the country.
Well, yeah, and what we found, we did a couple of experiments where we worked with the rail at traffics, and on real far stuff, going to the coast, the train, as long as it wasn't delayed, the train made better time than trucks. They could do very well. So there was really, in certain lanes, there was no sense putting on a truck. Now, of course, during the winter, you get derailments and things like that. But the rest of the time, it works very well, especially if it doesn't need team. And a lot of people don't want to pay for team service.
Exactly. That's an aspect that's definitely going away. And I mean, I'm looking at the time, man. We blowing through it. So I guess we better get ready to put a bow on this thing. But ladies and gentlemen, if you guys would, we'd love to hear your thoughts about what it is that we've been talking about over the past hour. Give us your concerns or give us your comments down in the comment section. Let us know what it is that you think. What do you feel is going to be taking place? Do you think that maybe trucking may be getting ready to be poised for somewhat of a comeback early next year? Or do you think we're in for more of the same? What are your thoughts on non-domicile CDL drivers and things of that nature? Would love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Love to get your perspectives on it. Do you think that we should have a higher barrier of entry to get your CDL license? All inquiring minds would like to know. So we're inquiring. Let us know what you guys think.
I totally agree. Rico, I will say one thing. I came from I fought it, and we were in my younger days. I was a gypsy, and we fought the idea of barriers to entry, and we got what we wanted. And sometimes don't care for what you ask for, because we got what we wanted, and this is the result. So we have to find a halfway. We need some barrier to entry. I can tell you, in the province of Ontario where I live, it's a lot easier to get a trucking license than it is a hunting license.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying. It's now it's easier to get a CDL than it is to get than it is to get your cosmetology license, so to speak.
There you go. So I think we do need. And I don't want to invite the government in to run our business, because they tried it many years ago and they were disastrous in some ways. In some ways, they did a good job. But I think we all want to continue making money in the trucking industry. But we do need some sort of barrier so that people do things right. That's really important.
Yeah.
And people need to know what they're doing.
With that being said, Chuck, let the good folks know how they can get a hold of you, and we'll get ready to wrap this baby up.
All right. If anybody needs me for anything, just reach out to me by email. My email address is chucksnow280@outlook.com. Send me an email with your phone number. I get back to all our guests, all our listeners. Whatever I can help you with, I will. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week.
Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys for taking the time to hang out with us. We are pre-recording this as well, but today is Tuesday. We'll be airing this a little bit later on tonight. I've got to get on the road and get ready to get back down into my neck of the woods. So with that being said, like I said, we always thank you guys for hanging out with us. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, though. We really want to see what your thoughts are in the comments. Let's get a little engagement going. And if you guys would, please stay safe out there, stay healthy, stay profitable. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at the same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch you on the flip flop. God bless. Be safe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.